Before we dive into today's episode, I want to share something with you that I'm really excited about. If anxiety, panic, or avoidance has been keeping you from living the life you want, not because you don't know what to do, but because fear keeps holding you back, I created something just for you. It's called Stop Avoiding and Start Living, a 5-day live experience with me where we focus on breaking the cycle of avoidance, quieting the noise in your head, and actually taking steps toward the life you want. All week, I'll be teaching you practical step by step tools, going live coaching, and answering your questions so you're not doing any of it alone. And there'll be no forcing, no white knuckling, just real strategies to help you feel more confident and free. And because this experience is live and interactive, spots are limited. We start on April 13th, and it's just $97. This is less than the cost of one therapy session. So if you're ready to stop letting fear call the shots, start building self trust, and actually start living again, I'd love to see and support you inside. You can learn more at the link in the show notes. I'm Shannon Ireland, your host of a Healthy Push podcast. I struggled with anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia for 15 years. Everything used to be hard for me. Even just driving 5 minutes from my house used to feel impossible. But now I absolutely live for travel and adventure, and I experience lots of peace and joy. I've not only reclaimed my life, but I've helped hundreds of others to do the same. Here, we stop managing anxiety and instead we create a healthy relationship with it. One where you say goodbye to the anxious thoughts, symptoms, panic attacks, and fears, and you actually live your life. Forget complicated strategies, quick fixes, or the same old hacks you've heard 100 times before. Each week, I'll bring you simple, actionable advice and honest conversations that lead to real, long-term healing. You aren't just an anxious person, my friend. There are reasons why you're struggling with anxiety, and these are things you can fix and heal from. And this is where that journey begins. Welcome. You're right where you're meant to be. Hello, and welcome back to a Healthy Push podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Boley, a therapist based in Colorado who works with high achieving, perfectionistic humans. You know, the ones who look like they've got it all together, but that they say, I'm doing great, but I'm secretly dying on the inside. She really helps people untangle their worth from productivity, navigate burnout, and learn how to be ambitious without living in a constant state of pressure and anxiety. So I am so excited to sit down with you, Jennifer. Welcome to a Healthy Push podcast.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm so excited to be here.
We were chatting a little bit before we hit record, and I was just giving Jen so much props for doing the reels that she does. And they are, if you're not following her on Instagram, we'll give the links to that. But like, it's just incredible. The videos, how relatable, how funny. Like, I always laugh. I'm like, this is such good stuff.
Thank you so that seriously means so much to me. Like every time someone says something like that to me or just compliments me on my content, I get messages like that. Like, I love your content, that it makes me feel so like related to, it resonates with me. It never gets old. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's like that's what we're there for. We're there for connection and laughter. And like, we need so much of that right now. So,
So much.
okay. Obviously, this topic I selfishly love to talk about because I myself am like high achieving perfectionist, all the things. So I just want to start here. Like when people come to you to work with you, I'm assuming they don't sit down and say, like, hey, I'm a perfectionist. I'm assuming they're like, I'm doing all the things and I'm exhausted. Like, is that
Mhm.
the common experience when working with clients?
Yes, in the past, for sure, that's been more of what I've experienced, and still even, like, people will come to me even though it's, like, advertised that I work with high achievers and perfectionists, and so a lot of clients have found me on social media now, which I feel really grateful for. So, like, people who find me on social media kinda know, like, "Okay, she works with high achievers," and so I do tend to attract more high achievers who come and, like, self-identify as a high achiever right off the bat. But in the past, it's been I mean, there definitely are people in there that are like, I am exhausted, I'm doing all of the things, and and then we just kinda dive in from there, like, "Okay, yeah, let's work from this framework," you know?
Yeah. I think it's so tricky because maybe you even know or understand some of these things about yourself. Like, I really am a high achiever. I like things to be like I'm type A. You hear that a
Yes,
lot too.
so am I.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like I definitely could recognize these things about myself, but not really be able to explain like what was going on and especially what was going on sort of in the background. So I would love to dig in there because obviously, like there's typically so much going on under the surface. It's not just like, oh, I am so type A and I'm a perfectionist. Like there's so many layers to
Oh,
it.
yeah, and so many people look like they have it all together, right? I think that's kinda what you're saying. It looks like high achievers and type A people have it all together and are doing just fine and even like being a high achiever. But I think it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, I talk to clients all week about this, but talking to, clients who say, "If I relax, then something bad will happen." That's such a common thing that I hear in my office, but they also feel exhausted at the same time, right? It's like, I want to relax, I would love to, but I can't. If I relax, something bad will happen, you know?
Yeah. And I think that something bad happened. I don't know, you tell me. I'm just obviously speaking here from my experience. To me, what I equate that to is like, I'm going to have to feel, like, I'm going to have to process. And that for me is like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no.
Yes. Yes, and so many intellectualizers and high achievers are avoiding that. I know I am. I know as a high achiever, that's exactly what I'm doing when I find myself overstimulated. I've learned a lot about my nervous system, and when I'm in my window of tolerance, I know what that feels like. When I'm in fight or flight, I know what that feels like, and when I'm overstimulated by everything and anything, like my partner touches me, I'm like, "Don't touch me." I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
I'm definitely in fight or flight right now." I talk about putting on those goggles, those fight or flight goggles, and everything's fight or flight and anxiety provoking, anxiety inducing, urgent, right? And equate it to putting on a pair of goggles that have a red lens and everything's red, like that's just how you see the world. So I know when I'm in that space in my nervous system, I know I'm there a lot of the time, but sometimes, and I see this with clients too, sometimes it's like, but well, I'm just gonna stay here because it feels safe, right? It feels safe to keep doing and to keep performing and to avoid feeling like I will constantly have it in the back of my mind, like, I should journal, right? Or like saying something to my partner, like, I should write down some thoughts and like write down what I'm feeling. And it's sometimes it can get to that point where I don't get to it, and that clients have the same experience. So I know I love working with high achievers because I know through and through what it's like to be one and how it can be so hard to stop and to feel and to let yourself sink in to whatever you're experiencing that tends to be covered up and masked through urgency and doing and producing. Like producing feels and achieving feels so good, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like, that makes sense. But it also prevents people from living an authentic life, right? And a life that feels really safe and good and enjoyable. Everybody that I work with who's a high achiever would love to relax more, but doesn't know how.
Yeah. I totally want to get there because I think, like, before we go there, I wanna go in a different area, like, dig in a little bit more, but what you're saying about rest, like, is so triggering, right, to so many people who are high performing. So, I think, what feels familiar, right, we sort of go toward, we like. It's like that doing, going, like, putting on a face, right, not asking for help. I think that's such a piece of it too, is, like, not wanting to feel that discomfort of people seeing you, right? Like,
Yeah.
not being okay because you can make it look like you're fine everything's fine, you've got it all, when under the surface, you're like so anxious, you're experiencing panic attacks, you feel so much pressure, like you're saying yes to things that you know you don't want to say yes to. And it's like, ah, I'm doing this because it feels more familiar, better to my brain than for me to go the other way. Like that. Can you talk about that? Because that is like such a hard thing, right? To navigate.
It's
Like,
such a hard thing. Yeah, when it feels so familiar and so and re yeah, rest is like, I'll rest when this is done, or I'll rest when once I achieve this, or after my kids turn this age, or right, like, and it can just go on and on and on where we're just prolonging rest and saying we'll get to it, but never getting to it, and then feeling this internal tension of like, I want to rest, like, why am I not doing it? Right. And like really beating ourselves up about it. Yeah, so there's just, like, this big internal tension that makes it really hard when we're so used to doing the high performing, high achieving, and obviously that tends to go back really, really far, right? It's not just like it came out of nowhere. I mean, we can circle back to childhood, our therapist's favorite thing to do, like everybody's like, "Am I gonna have to talk about my childhood?" Probably. We're not just gonna like camp there, but it is probably linked to something that happened in childhood or patterns that were happening in childhood where you got praise for producing or you weren't getting any attention, so achieving felt like the way to get attention. Like, there's so many, like, lines to how this could happen, and so of course, it feels really safe to keep doing that because it's a way that you've learned how to survive and be in the world, to be somebody that achieves and finds quote unquote safety through that. And taking a hard left turn to do something else is like really confusing for the nervous system that's used to going a hard right, like it's really anxiety provoking and inducing in itself. And so, yeah, like I talk with people about the familiarity piece. And of course, it feels safe. And of course, it feels good. If we've been used to doing one thing our whole life, then of course it's gonna feel weird. I think I used to also work with people in high control religions or who are coming out of high control. I don't do that anymore. I mean, it tends to be a piece with high achievers. I find like people who are raised in very strict homes with um a very fundamentalist religion, which I find really interesting. So I still find it woven through my work, but it's not like what I advertise for. But I talk about how in religions like that, when you're raised like that, it feels like your worldview, right? And then you start to get on the other side of it, maybe when you're deconstructing or when someone's telling you something different, and you're like, God, that just doesn't feel true, right? I mean, like, but people outside of a fundamentalist belief system can say, "Yeah, no, you don't have to do this way. You don't have to live this way. There's another way." But the person who was raised in it and really steeped in it will be like, "I don't know, that feels so wrong." So I think there's so many overlaps between that and I mean, anything that we're really used to doing, right? It just feels so unfamiliar and feels so right in our nervous system, and anything else feels so wrong. So performing and high achieving, someone can be telling you, you don't have to be doing this. And you're like, but this is what I do. Right. And I talk about, I love, talking about neuroplasticity and our brain's ability to change and adapt and our adaptive information processing system, which is the cornerstone of EMDR work that I do with clients, and how um, our body has an innate ability to heal itself, um, and also an ability to correct course and to build new neural pathways, like water forging through rock in a Grand Canyon over time. It creates a new pathway, and the same thing happens in our brain. So we're really doing that when we start to change course and do something different, but it is really hard. I mean, think about water forging through a rock. Of course, it's not the exact same in our brain, but it's a similar process, right? It's not a familiar course. Neurotransmitters are probably going to be bumping into each other. Like, where the hell are we? Like, but it is okay to start practicing doing something different than the high achieving way. Like you're saying, it's like, but that's not familiar. It's really, really hard. And I really normalize that for people.
Yeah. It's so hard because they're behaviors, right? And like, thank goodness we can change, right, our behaviors, become aware of them. I think that's like the hardest freaking step is to even become aware of like what's perpetuating all of it because I don't think I fully even understood until I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing so much that is continuing on me on this hamster wheel that like I feel so
Yeah.
frustrated with and that I can't get off of." Because I think it's easy to say, right? Well, like pull back, like do less or just rest.
So easy to say.
Yeah. And it's like, what do you mean? Like pull back, rest, stop doing so much. And that feels so threatening to a brain that's so used to going and doing. And like kind of what you were speaking to on the religion front, I think this is a theme with high achievers in general is like you kind of have these rules, you have this rigidity. And if you were
Yeah.
raised in that, like
Yes.
rules, rigidity, whether it's the childhood stuff or the religious stuff, like I was raised in all of it. And I think it comes back to like you don't want anything bad to happen. You really think like if I do this, if I follow this that way, if I remain rigid and follow the rules and do really good, like bad things aren't going to happen. So,
Yes.
yeah, I think it's so I don't know, I assume obviously clients come to you and you're not just like, "Well, it would be really helpful if you just pull back and do less." And it's like, "What? What?" So it's like, where do you even start? Like, what does that conversation even look like?
Yeah, well, even as you were talking, I was struck with, like, just a lot of compassion for you as you were talking about growing up, and I was starting to kinda just feel connected to the inner child in you of, like, "I have to do this. This is what I'm used to doing," just really hearing that, like, "This is what I do to feel safe," and it just makes me emotional, like, I feel myself tearing up just thinking about how many people were raised that way and thinking that that was the only way, and so that's the other thing that I think about. I don't know why I'm starting to cry. I don't really get emotional on podcasts, but I think I just feel so deeply. I just see the little kids that are used to doing this, and I think when you're talking about what's the first step to kind of looking at this, I love to do inner child work and parts work. Parts work doesn't always include inner child, like looking at your inner child. It can, but it can also just include, when I talk about parts work, I'm talking about internal family systems work and looking at different parts of ourselves that have been burdened with different beliefs that we then start to live out of. And so I think about I really get curious about those parts in clients. I start to use parts language really early on, and, "Oh, that's a part of you that is really interested in, um, in surviving this way, that believes something bad will happen if you don't keep doing this, that is used to protecting yourself, your family, maybe others through high achieving and getting a lot of praise for that. And just kind of starting to I mean, I feel naturally just this softening towards the client that I'm just trying to communicate and use a different language for that part, right? Like this high achieving and perfectionism is adaptive. It's not pathological, right? Of course, symptoms can come up that feel like, oh my God, this is so annoying. I'm sick. What's wrong with me? Right. Like, but I just really try to get curious of the adaptive nature and the protective process of these parts and of this high achieving and try to help the client understand that too. Like, what could this part be protecting you from? And of course, it's not like we just don't dive right in there. We get to know the part, but then asking questions like, what is this part afraid would happen if you did slow down and do less? Right. Yeah. Of course, I'm not just saying, meditate, stop doing so much, and because people are like, "What the," of course I would love to do that, but I can't just do that, and so, um it's not just a one and done process. I love when people talk about therapy not being a microwave, right? It's more like a slow cooker. Over time, we are taking these things out and looking at these pieces. It's not like, okay. And we have to be really curious about things that were built up over time that took a long time to come to fruition, to come to being. So it's okay that it takes a while to wrap our heads around this. Like, I still have clients that, even though we're digging into this, are like, no, something bad is going to happen if I slow down. I cannot slow down. I have to stay on top of it. And I'm like planting these seeds, asking questions like, how you're saying that if you slow down, something bad will happen. I'm also hearing you say that you're exhausted by the rumination and not being able to sleep and, the tension that you feel in your body all the time. So, like, can we just be curious that there's 2 different parts here. There's the part that feels really scared about slowing down, and there's a part that's exhausted and really wants to slow down. And there people will be like, "Yeah, but I'm still gonna keep going," right? Like, it's like it
Yeah.
takes a while to really, and so I try to be really patient with that. And I'm not trying to force anything or say you have to do this or shame any parts or anybody for the way that they're operating in the world, because again, I get it. Yeah, I do a lot of parts work. EMDR is one of my favorite things to do too, so we might facilitate EMDR really early on, like while we're also interweaving parts work and just starting to kind of like use bilateral stimulation to either notice like somatic cues, which a lot of high achievers don't have a lot of interoception practice,
Yep.
right? So we practice that. And just like thoughts and beliefs and triggers, even just like sitting with the thought like, something bad will happen if I rest, or anything like that, any sort of belief that the person has been operating under, just kinda sitting with it and doing some bilateral stimulation. I love to map the nervous system with clients to just see, what does it feel like when you feel safe? I know that you don't spend a lot of time in your window of tolerance. Most high achievers do not. Like, so many people that I work with are like, I feel safest when I'm problem solving or finding a sense of urgency or deep cleaning my house, like out of avoidance of my feelings, like I feel safest when
Yeah.
I'm doing that. Like that feels really safe. But we start to say, what else could feel safe? Like what else feels actually safe for you and not tied to your fight or flight pathway. So mapping, like, what does fight or flight, the sympathetic activation look like? What does shutdown, hypoarousal, dorsal, um, vagal look like? What does your window of tolerance, ventral vagal look like? And starting to really tease that out so people can start to see those cues in these moments and just start to see them a little differently when it's happening. So it's not like this drastic overhaul. It's like micro moments of noticing. I love just like being able to notice and name is like the foundation of everything, right? Being able to say, oh, shoot. I am like, for me, I'm overstimulated and snapping at my partner. I'm probably in fight or flight. What do I need to do to get some safety right now? Just creating different options. And of course, that involves a measure of behavioral activation, which involves doing something different than you're used to doing, which is hard. But yeah, it's hard. It's okay that it's hard.
Yeah. I love that though, that like all of these things that these different modalities, right, really help you initially with that awareness and the understanding. And I think having understanding is so helpful. It's not this like shaming, like, you need to stop doing this. It's like,
Right.
here's why you're doing this. And like, it's okay. Right. And let's just see how we could look at it differently first, not even like change it, but look at it differently. And I love parts work. I love that you do EMDR because I think a lot of people think and have this misunderstanding of like EMDR is just for trauma, like if you've
Totally.
experienced trauma. But I remember this was years ago. My therapist was like, "How about we do some EMDR?" And I was like, Relating to what?" And she was like, "You were just so stressed. You're so overwhelmed. Like you are not good at being in your body." And I was like, "Okay, fine." And it was so freaking helpful.
Yeah, can you tell me more about how it was helpful for you? I'd love to hear that.
Well, I think a lot of like high achievers, right, and perfectionists, you are so used to going and doing and not slowing down. And I think it's so for me being such a nature love to walk person, it was so similar for me doing EMDR to that. Like, oh, I have to just sort of kind of be. And with the bilateral stimulation, it was like very similar to when I go out for walks. Like you're constantly kind of looking at things. And so it was like this presence, like I had to be present. And 2, she was, of course, guiding me through, like, "Okay, and, like, what are you feeling now in your body?" And, it was and she pulled in parts work into it, and I was just like, "Oh my god." It was so helpful, though, in the sense of, like, slowing down actually feels good when
Yeah.
you do it in a way where you understand, like, why and how to do it in a helpful way for you, not just the what we hear, right? Like, "Go sit and meditate." It's like, "Fuck that. I am not
Fuck
sitting and
that sometimes. Yes, like,
Yeah,
so many people are no, people some people don't like to meditate, and that's fine, right? Like, meditation can be so different than just sitting in silence. Meditation can be on a walk in nature. Meditation can be doing your dishes. Meditation can be sitting with a friend and just, like, noticing what's coming up in like, there can be so many different ways to meditate and practice mindfulness. I love hearing that, and I love again, what you're saying about building the awareness and understanding and how that alone can feel really helpful. And as I'm saying that too, I just think of I have so many thoughts going through my mind, but as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of how high achievers in therapy are like, okay, well, come on, let's go. Like, when am I going to be
yeah.
better? Right.
Give me the list of shit to do.
Okay, like, I know I understand it, right? But there are layers that they might not understand that I'm trying to help them understand more, and so I do get a lot of pushback and perfectionist, like, I can feel parts of me coming up that get, like because it's me that I'm talking to, right? I'm
Yeah,
like, I know exactly how you feel until I have to really like, be careful with those parts or, like, notice sassy Jennifer coming out, even as a therapist with clients, like, noticing because I can feel the same things that they're feeling, and I know what it feels like, which is a great thing, but I have to also be aware of my parts that are coming up that are just when I start to notice, like, a defensiveness or getting triggered or, that countertransference happening. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this is my own shit that's coming up right now that I am, like, triggered by because I feel these same things and I feel this same way when I have these thoughts that my client is having when I'm feeling like, "No, it's fine." Like, thinking about me in my house when I'm rushing around and my partner, is telling me like, "Hey, can you slow down and just breathe for a second?" And I'm like, "No." You know? Like, I
yeah,
do the same the same thing. So I'm thinking about, like, the pushback and the high achievers who are like, "Can we just hurry up and heal?" And how we just notice that part of the process too, like, "Can we just do EMDR? Like, I'm ready." And it's like, sometimes I have to be the clinician that says, "No, you're not, right? We've got some stuff to do before I'm not just gonna throw you into EMDR when you aren't ready." And, but yeah, so that is definitely a facet of working with high achievers, just like this, like, hurry up and heal, which is I always say to my own therapist, like, the the parts that I'm always battling is this, like, hurry up to rest part. That's like, "Okay, I'm gonna hurry, 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 and then I'll rest," right? Hurry, 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 and then I'll finally slow down. So I know it's the same thing, again, in those when that comes up with clients in therapy, I know exactly what that feels like. Like, "Let's just get better. Let's just do this." But we have to do something differently to get somewhere different, right? And so hurrying up in therapy is not gonna do us any good because it's not doing us any good in our day-to-day life either. So I think of that, and then I'm thinking of just like you're saying with EMDR, how, yeah, a lot of people do think that EMDR is only for big T traumas and like, yeah, I wasn't in like a major car accident or I didn't have this like horrible thing happen to me as a kid or abuse or anything like that. And it's like, yeah, EMDR is great for those things. EMDR is also great for the complex trauma, the small T trauma that's happening over time that is emotional neglect that people don't even sometimes realize that they were emotionally neglected or like emotional abuse over time, right? Like those types of things that we can trace these beliefs back to moments like where did you learn that if you rest that something bad will happen? Where did you learn that performing, helped you survive and tracing it back to these moments? And we can do EMDR on any adverse life experience. And it's just helpful for anybody who feels really stuck and looping on the same thing and who knows these things, but who the body hasn't fully processed that, right? And EMDR is just a full body experience that helps everything get online and on the same page and helps things feel like they are processed to a completion that things feel more adaptive, right? So when you're talking about EMDR and just like finding more awareness of your body and finding more presence, I think it sounds really simple, but I think one of the beauties of EMDR is just being able to sit with something intentionally, which is very similar to just walking in the door to therapy. You're intentionally making time to look at something that you might not have otherwise taken an hour to look at. Like, I love the intention and the ritual behind therapy, and I think going a step deeper with EMDR is you're intentionally sitting with something with the buzzers, with the eye movements, and you're looking at it differently, and your body and your brain are looking at it differently too, and so it's just a way to I know process is such a broad word, but like to process these experiences that we really hone in on and find a way in, and then your nervous system does the rest, you know?
Yeah. Oh, something that you were touching on that I definitely want to dive into because it's like the listeners are going to be like, okay. So you mentioned the intellectualizing, right? And this is something I see so often in students and clients of mine is like they're really good at intellectualizing. They're really good at problem solving, at figuring things out, and they know all the things and they're trying to sort of take those things that they're actually good at, right? And a lot of times people are in these jobs where these things are sort of a requirement. Like they have to analyze and they have to problem solve and they are that they know a lot. They're very intelligent,
Mhm.
but they're trying to take that and then apply it to recovery.
To recovery, to healing,
Yeah, and like
like the
specifically
hurry up to heal. Uh-huh.
yeah, hurry up to heal, and the, like, "You're telling me that I need to feel, right? And so how do I do that, and what exactly does that look like?" And, like, it's very much the getting stuck in those loops of, like, "Well, just tell me how to do it, and I'll do it," or, like, just give me a list, and,
Yeah.
like, I'll check off all the boxes." And I'm like, "Okay, hold on, we can't do that," and, like, that's not gonna be helpful, so can you talk is that something that you see in working with clients?
Oh, yeah, all day, every day. Yeah, the intellect yeah, I remember laughing with a new client, in the recent months, because she was like, at the end of the session, she was like she started to ask me something, and I knew she was asking for homework, and I was like, You're asking me for homework, aren't you? You're about to" and she started laughing, and I started laughing, and she was like, "Why do I want homework?" Because it is that, like, if I'm doing something I will feel like, like this is working, right? And so we just like I laughed with her. We laughed so hard about that. And she was like, "How did you know that?" And I was like, "I do this all day, my girl." Like I know you want homework. I know. And that happened. That's not just one client. That happens all the time where people ask for homework. And well, what can I do outside of here? What would you like me to be doing outside of here? What Excel spreadsheet can I make? And I honor that because that's how my brain works too. So, like, I also honor these parts that really like to have a plan, but I'm also trying to help clients who safety, and I say it with quotes, safety in a plan feels safer without always having a plan. Feeling safer in uncertainty and being able to embrace the uncertainty, which I know people are like, fuck that. I do not want any semblance of uncertainty in my life. Why do I have to do that? And it's like, well, what would it be like? How much more freeing would it be like to be able to sit with uncertainty without a huge measure of feeling like you're going to throw up, right? Or like this anxiety that feels like I've got to get a grip on this. Like, so we just identify like, um, that this is how again, this is how you've operated for so long, what else could it look like? And so I'm really honoring the intellectualizer and the part that wants to figure things out and noticing it as a part and using parts work to get to know it and really spending time with it so that the client, again, it comes back to the awareness piece, the client can see that intellectualizer in real time outside of the session too and can see, oh my gosh, yeah, this is my intellectualizer part who, maybe they personify it in some way in their mind or they have a name for it or whatever it may be. And just starting to relate to that part differently, and I talk with people too about like I am always aware of when I'm talking to a part of a client in a session rather than like their full embodied capital S self. Obviously, that's probably happening a lot of therapy sessions because they come to process these things. But when I'm talking to a part, I try to point that out or at least just like talk to this part in a way that will um, help this part understand themselves better and the client can hear this conversation too, right? Like, and I talk with clients about that, who talk about relationship issues outside of sessions or, like, I wonder what part of your partner you're talking to in those moments. And maybe I wonder if you would notice that this is a part up in your partner at this time, like how that might change the conversation. Um, so anyway, yeah, talking like noticing the intellectualizing all day and really helping to develop a sense of um interoception, which is just being able to feel body sensations, like, doing the tried and true. I do love a body scan. I know some people are like body scans are like, but I love a body scan and helping clients, and I found it really helpful for my clients who are intellectualizers to just like practice a body scan for their homework, right? Like that's good homework to practice a
Yeah.
body scan or to sit with a sensation and see if they can just notice the sensation rather than doing what they're used to doing to get rid of it. I saw something that I don't know if you follow the outdoor therapist. He's awesome. I love him.
Yes.
He is so great, and he posted something on his story the other day that was like, "It's not how do I get rid of this feeling, it's how can I care for this feeling until it passes through." And I was like, "Damn, that's good." And that's what I'm telling people all the time in so many words is like, it's not about not feeling, it's about getting better at feeling, and feeling is okay, and we don't have to be scared of it. A lot of people who are used to performing and doing were not emotionally attuned to as kids. They were neglected. And that's hard for people to hear, really hard,
Yeah.
especially for people who do have like a measure of respect for their parents and who aren't like, boiling angry at them like a lot of people who come to therapy. But like some people are like, my mom didn't neglect me, and or my dad didn't, and so and just kind of naming like, well, in some ways, like you might not have been attuned to in a way that helped you learn how to attune to yourself because kids do learn to regulate through their parents. That's the way, number one way that they learn to regulate, especially in the first few years of life. We regulate our emotions through our parents' emotions. And if our parents are telling us to stop crying or get over it or that's not important or, like we learn ways to bypass those emotions. And so we're really good at bypassing emotions, And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many ways that we learn to intellectualize. And again, it makes sense. And I'm never saying like you can't do that, but just noticing how the intellectualizing is preventing people from really being able to care for themselves, and get to a way of being with themselves that helps them to find more enjoyment in life rather than avoidance and urgency.
So I tell clients so much, and like what I had to learn myself was like it's okay to have the feelings, but you've got to actually support yourself through the feelings. And I think that's what I always wanted to bypass was like, well, I know I don't wanna feel because I really honestly didn't have the capacity to, but, like, it feels really uncomfortable, and so what I always tell students is, like, how can you actually support yourself through a feeling? Not just, like, trying to understand, "How do I feel it? What's the right way to feel it? Like, what's the right way to heal?" I'm like, "No, no, 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 no."
I have clients who I ask, "What are you noticing being like emotionally right now?" And they'll say, "I don't know. What do you think I'm noticing? What do you think I'm feeling? What should I be feeling?" And I just like laugh with them and
Yeah.
we giggle and I'm like, because I know what that feel like they just want to say the right answer and want to and they don't know, right? We honestly don't know because like you said, sometimes we don't have the capacity.
Yeah, such a huge majority of people that I work with are the high achievers, the perfectionists, and it's like the parts of me that are screaming like, "No, no, 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 that's not how you heal. Like we can't do this. We can't intellectualize. We can't problem solve." But like, it's such a huge thing that we overlook just to have that understanding and that awareness and like this small gentle shifts. So I would love for you to tell me, like, what's a small experiment? If someone's like, I'm a high achiever, I'm a perfectionist, like, I go do, I don't stop. The word rest makes me want to die inside. What's one small experiment that you could give them that they could try this week just to like see like how they could approach things differently?
I'm a big fan of micro practices, right? Like, I think when, especially high achievers, when they think of implementing something different than what they're doing and knowing they want to rest and knowing they want to be doing, yeah, something differently, they go balls to the wall like we do as high achievers. They're like, okay, I have to be meditating and levitating at the same time, right? Like, I've got to be doing it all. I've got to be meditating for an hour. I've got to be doing a workbook. I got to, and I don't have time for that. I hear that all the time. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to do that. I'm already so busy. I'm already, right. And of course, like high achievers are prioritizing things that make them feel safe and we can be curious about that and why we don't have time for these other things and what we're avoiding and not doing these other things. So I always like to introduce micro moments of not even necessarily rest, but just orienting or grounding, like, "Okay, I am just gonna feel my feet on the floor, and for the next 20 seconds, I'm just gonna notice whether I'm sitting or standing, just really feeling what it feels like to feel my feet on the floor." Or I'm gonna look around my room and just name 5 things that I see, that are neutral or that make me feel safe, just, like, getting a different perspective in that moment and finding those micro moments that just start to, again, make a different turn in your nervous system. We're not always turning the one way, we can turn another way that just start to practice something different. So anything that helps you orient to the here and now, whether it's feeling your feet on the floor, whether it's looking like I can see Pikes Peak out my window right now and I look at it every day, but do I really look at it, you know? So,
Yeah.
like, just looking at Pikes Peak and noticing the different colors on the mountain and noticing, oh my gosh, there's actually like I can see where the tree line starts, and just like spending some time slowing down in micro moments and really seeing how you feel in those moments. I love 5 colors, which I know like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the 5 colors, those kinds of orienting practices can get a bad rap because 'cause they're so cliche, but I think they're awesome because 'cause they're so easy to remember and really do help people remember. I mean, even as a therapist, I still have to look up the order of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, I always forget it, but, like, just knowing, like, okay, like, 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I can touch, 2 things I can, smell, and then or 5 colors, like, okay, I'm gonna pick something pink, and I'm gonna find it in my room 5 times, and I'm just gonna name that out loud, and, those kinds of micro moments really do cause a big shift, and I know that high achievers, perfectionists are looking for seismic shifts, but we're also saying we don't need seismic shifts all the time. You don't have to be overworking and overburdening yourself all the time, especially in your healing. It's okay to do these micro moments and to do something different, you know? So, that would be a practice that I would recommend is just micro moments of whatever feels good for that person. Like, it could be a person who likes gardening or tending to their plants, like just really noticing as they're watering their plants, like how that feels, things like that.
Yeah. You're not gonna tell people like, "Oh, carve out the next day to do nothing
Right.
all day."
Go,
Just
yeah, go to a retreat,
yeah.
a silent retreat and get a massage. No, we're not doing
Yeah,
that.
right. So I think it's so important to end on this because I think we can tend to see being like high achievers and perfectionists and type A, like being all of these things as sort of bad or like um parts that you like need to get rid of, but I don't think so at all. Like I always say, like I'm always going to be a high achiever, I'm always going to be a go-getter, like there is so much of that that I love and I don't want to get rid of it. So it's like, can you talk about how that's important too, like the ambitious side of you, the gut, like we don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah, I wish that was the first thing I said because that's what I believe through and through, and that's what I really try to hone in on with all my clients is that, yeah, this isn't bad to be a high achiever. Like Catherine Morgan Schaffer, The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control is one of my favorite books and something that I reference a lot. And what Catherine talks about a lot is using your perfectionism as a superpower and seeing your perfectionism as a superpower because it is. And it's okay to be a high achiever and to be a perfectionist. Like, she talks about like adaptive versus maladaptive high achieving and how we have to be able to identify when it's adaptive and when it's maladaptive. Like, yes, I am never going to stop being a high achiever. You are never going to stop being a high achiever. My clients are high achievers, and I love that about them. We are actual like superhumans, and it really is a superpower and an amazing quality. But when we believe that if I don't if I don't achieve, then I'm a bad person, or if I don't get this done, then, the whole day is ruined, right? We have to start noticing when it can turn into maladaptive achieving and when it's getting in the way of us being in our window of tolerance and finding safety. And we can still be high achievers in our window of tolerance, but we're doing so in a grounded, more calm, more centered, more like, I am a good person even when I'm not achieving, even when I'm not doing anything. So, yeah, I would recommend that book to all of your listeners because it's so good. She's amazing. She was an on-site therapist at Google for years, which, anybody who works at Google is going to be a high achiever. And so she worked with, and even in her private practice, worked with high achievers and perfectionists. And she talks about like even different types of perfectionists and how you can embrace your perfectionist type and what that might look like for, I think there's like 4 types, 4 or 5 types. Um, but yeah, I truly believe that being a perfectionist is awesome, but just like anything, it can turn maladaptive, right? Like alcohol can be awesome and be fun to drink to celebrate, but it can turn maladaptive quickly if it's not used properly. Any sort of, anything like that. Gambling, like sure, it can be fun sometimes, but not for everyone, right? Sometimes it can
Yes.
really go downhill quickly, right? Like there are things even exercise like that can turn maladaptive. Like I just have to notice like what is um what is the intention behind this and am I am I doing this because if I don't, I believe that I am not worthy, or do I know I'm still worthy while I am achieving, and can I find ways to ground myself and find safety in that and learn how to also feel and take care of myself while I'm achieving, not just completely abandon myself in the process.
Oh, I love that. Okay, Jennifer, this has been so good. And I highly recommend people go check you out because your Instagram is so good and you have some great resources. So if people want to find and connect with you, where can they find you?
They can find me at Jennifer Ann Counseling on Instagram and on TikTok. I also just started sharing my reels to Facebook, but I hate Facebook. It's scary over there, but I'm just trying to try
Same.
something new. It's just scary on Facebook, but I also share my reels to Facebook too on Jennifer Ann Counseling. So,
Love that. Well, thank you so much. This has been so fun and
thank
helpful.
you, Shannon. It's been so great. Thanks for having me.
I hope you loved this episode of A Healthy Push. If you have, I'd be so grateful if you could leave me a rating and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. This helps people to find the show and get the support they need. And if you know someone who could use a little push, be sure to share this episode with them. And for even more support, head over to ahealthypush.com for show notes and loads of tips, tools, and inspiration to help you on your recovery journey. I'll see you next week.